Here's an interesting question from Dr. Samina Mula that we'd like for the panelists to respond to. She says, I would love to hear from the panelists about how food might repair and heal, whether intergenerational trauma or even in the current pandemic context. How can food play a role in healing and repair?
You know, in the Hmong culture, especially in the Hmong community, we have not left gardening at all. I mean, we come from an agricultural background, and even adapting to our new environments, we still garden where, even if we just have a little lot or a little yard, we still want to plant something. And so our parents were always gardening, growing something, if not much, at least herbs, at least some green mustard, so that because those are our everyday food that we ingredients that we put into our food. And so to us, that's very very cultural, where um, our elders feel very at home, if even if they're in a new environment. At least they can still eat their traditional food. At least that's a piece of them that will live with them forever. And growing up, my mother came from a more prominent monk background, where she was the youngest of her siblings in that my maternal grandmother gave birth to. Because my grandfather, I don't know if you know much about the Hmong culture, but our culture practiced polygamy. And so my maternal grandfather had three wives, and my grandmother was the first wife. And so my mother was the youngest daughter of my grandmother's, and so she had the opportunity to attend school back in Laos, where her older sisters had to work around the house and garden with the family. And so, not having to garden her entire life, I was not taught how to garden
Mm.
until I married my husband. And then, and my parents-in-law are much older than my parents. And so that's when I started learning to garden with my parents-in-law and garden with them. And so now, I'm not an expert yet. I'm still learning. I'm just growing a few little things here and there with the help of my sister-in-law. But, to be able to grow your own food and to be able to harvest your food and cook the traditional meals that we normally have is something that's very warming for us. And especially for me now, as I'm getting older and educating the Southeast Asian population about health, we are always talking about nutrition. And so to us, this is something that we like to resort back to, is grow your own food so that it's organic. Cook your traditional Hmong food because it's most healthy. Because we don't use many spices, and our food, Hmong food, is pretty bland. But I love it because we make our own fresh tea at every meal, especially if you have elders in the home. And so to us, this is what food do for us. It still keeps us with our identity of where we came from, who we are.
I want to jump in there too, to answer Dr. Tamina Mula's question. It's very interesting because when the Hmong resettled, as well as other Southeast Asians, when they resettled here in the U.S., they were placed into places like Milwaukee, that had racial segregation, places of high poverty, high crime. And I actually grew up in rural Wisconsin, where I was only one of three families that were the only people of color around. And so in a place where you lose a lot of connection with other people, but also where you grow up as a child, not having any connection to the history that's being taught in the grade school, and at the same time experiencing almost a sense of invisibility. Food has a way to create that sense of visibility and that sense of home, that I find that is fairly healing. And so, coming into Milwaukee, even though I was here as undergrad, being able to still enjoy Southeast Asian cuisine really made Milwaukee home for me. And in and I think in terms of kind of like healing intergenerational trauma, I think being able to engage in food generationally really important, because it allows first, second generation people to understand the kind of experiences and memories through food, rather than having to be this kind of conversation where you just have, between the elders and the younger generation, but that food becomes the conduit in which you learn about history, learn about your parents' experiences, and that in itself is, I think, quite healing.
Great. Thank you all very much. Thank you so very much. And as always has been the case over the last several months, we look at several weeks, we look at these images and wonder why we are not somewhere eating right now.